Had you guys? So you had never won the Daytona Busch race?
No.
Okay. So
Still haven't to this day.
Okay. Is it? I'm guessing it irks the shit out of you.
It aggravates the crap out of me. Hi, I'm Clyde McLeod, and this is the Derek Pernesiglio Show. Did I say it right?
Can I drive you?
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Derek Pernesiglio Show, and we have got another great guest joining us. Our guest is one of the legends of motorsports that didn't have to wear a fire suit. He was a longtime crew chief, car builder, and he's done everything in the sport. Clyde McLeod joins us. Clyde, thanks for coming in today. This is a huge treat for me.
It's a treat for me too, Derek. I'm glad you asked me to come on. I enjoy talking the history of the sport and back in the day and all that kind of stuff. We had a lot of fun.
Oh, we're gonna chat about everything, the history, back in the day, the current state of racing and everything. But what are you up to nowadays?
I'm still at Stewart Haas. I got a few more days left before my official retirement. Mm-hmm. I'm working part-time for him right now, but I've been there be 12 years in February. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of finishing up there. It was a great place to work. I went there when Zip went there, and Tony was there a couple of years before I got there, but went there because of him. And it's a great bunch of people there and good operation, and I like the people. I like what I do, so...
What is it that you are doing over there? What's your role?
Right now I'm in charge of the component fab shop, which we make all the parts for the Xfinity teams.
Okay.
We used to make everything for the Cup teams too until the Gen 7 car came out, where you buy everything. We're not allowed to make the parts anymore. But
yeah.
I've done everything there, from being the 14 car shop foreman for Tony Stewart to running the teardown department to about anything they asked me to do, I would do, and then ended up being in the fab shop.
And it's got to be a pretty good feeling for you guys. You were working on the Xfinity side, you said, and you guys won the championship this year.
Yes. Cole did such a great job, and that team is a good team. They're a bunch of racers at heart, mm-hmm. most of them. My son works over there also, not to toot his horn, but I'm glad he ended up there. It's a good place to work, and they got a great group. Between Cole and Riley. Riley, he's got the hang of it now. He come on really strong last year. I can't wait to see what kind of year he's going to have next year. And I think both of them cars will make another run at it. And I'm happy for Cole. Cole really deserves it. He's a good kid. Both them kids they're not out of the usual driver mode these days. They're actually there 2 or 3 days a week. They actually pitch in. They'll work on a car. They'll help. They'll sit down.
Really?
They'll go to the sim without putting up a big fight.
Cool.
They'll sit with the crew chiefs and go over setups, and they're really into it. Yep.
Right. And of course, you being a modified guy at heart, having a guy like Ryan Preece over there driving for one of the cars, it's got to be pretty cool. Just to be attached to those kind of modified roots that you had.
Oh yeah, definitely. Ryan is another one of them great kids. Mm-hmm. I've known him his whole life. His grandfather used to help us with the Sherry Cup car.
Right.
And his dad, they're all racers at heart back in Southington, Connecticut. And they're a race family. And Ryan's been involved in the races since he was a young kid.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing, though, how that works out over the years? Because, here you are and at the Cup level, the highest level of American motorsports. And it's still the guys that you did some modified stuff with. Zippy is, was part of the team. Reggie works in the shop. Ryan Preece, who was a modified champion, is now driving for the team. So it's got to be a really cool feeling how everyone rises together.
Yeah, it's cool to see the guys that that you've seen, you watch them grow up. And you see them develop and what they've turned into, and they get to the top level,
Yeah.
I mean, it's been going on for a long time. It started in my memories, with Jeff Bodine mm-hmm. and Ron Bouchard and, Ryan Preece and Reggie and all them guys. It's just
right.
incredible the careers they've had.
Your roots run in the modified world. You came from the modified ranks of the short tracks of the Northeast, like Plainville, and then Stafford, Thompson, and did all those things over the years. How did it all begin for you?
Well, it began a long, long time ago in the 60s. It started because there was a club on the corner of our neighborhood that I lived in, and there's another name from the past that lived in that neighborhood. We were close friends with Stan Greger. And the club on the corner raced some novice cars at Plainville Stadium. So we used to hang around. We were 13, 14 years old. We used to hang around at the club, help them guys at night after school. Help. They gave us stuff to do just to keep us out of their hair.
Right.
Joey and Jimmy D'Angelo was the name of the guys. And they raced the stadium, and we'd hang around there and we'd try to help them. We learned from them guys. And when we got to be about 15 years old, they snuck us. We'd get into cars and sneak in on the trailer, get into the Plainville Stadium, because we weren't old enough to get in.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we got hooked on the sport. And that was the home track for us. So when I did turn 16, we just started going to the races. And then when I graduated high school in 67, I think it was, 68, got connected with a guy called Billy Zenobie up in New Britain, Connecticut. And his father owned a gas station on Allen Street, and his uncle owned a construction company on Allen Street, the Zenobie brothers. And he had just bought a coupe stock car from a guy called Ricky Sunderland, who raced Plainville Stadium, and had it in the gas station. And Billy said, "Hey, you want to help us, work on this car, and we'll go race it at the stadium?" I said, "Sure, I'd like to do that." So lo and behold, here we go. So we had an old 55 Ford pickup with an open trailer, and him and I were the only ones work on the car. We work on it at night because we had day jobs at the gas station.
All right.
And his uncle helped us out with money at the construction company. And his dad helped us out.
So he drove and you worked on it?
No, we both worked on it. He hired, the first driver we had was Al Dumont.
Oh, okay.
He was a friend of Billy's. And Al was okay, but, we never won with him. We'd run mid-pack. Yeah, never did a whole lot. And Al was a good guy. Everybody liked Al. But Al finally, did something else, and he wasn't going to drive anymore. So we got connected with Ronnie Wyckoff, and that was our big break at the stadium. So when Wyckoff got in there and drove, we started to win.
Oh, okay. So he was driving your car in the modified division.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool. So you guys were building winning cars right out of I shouldn't say right out of the gate, but it happened pretty soon. Yeah,
probably the second year that we raced there.
Okay,
we got Ronnie to drive it, and back then, you had one car, and you can ask Reggie the same question. Right. That car is the car you ran the entire season.
Okay. Yeah, because you guys raced with Reggie when he was at Plainville during the Plainville days, too.
Reggie is another one that built his own car.
Okay.
He built it behind his uncle's house, Eddie Mack, and Reggie built it himself in the garage.
Now, was Plainville like Danbury, where it was a club where you had to be voted in? And
no.
Okay, so you can go to Plainville and race on a Saturday night.
Open. Anybody could go there, and a lot of people did go there. We had all kinds of drivers there, from Don McTavish to Eddie Flemke to Chap Membrino. Everybody came there.
So you had known Don McTavish then back in his racing days?
Yes, knew Don. In his early days, I didn't know him very long because he moved up quickly from racing modifieds. He got his big break at Daytona, and lost his life at Daytona. So
I know there's video actually of the crash. He's
a great driver too, Don. He reminded me a lot of Eddie Flemke. He was a master at car control.
Really?
Yeah.
And could he build his own stuff too?
He was pretty mechanical, yeah.
Okay.
He was a good dude.
So, look at some of the legends that you've worked with over the years. Ron Bouchard, Eddie Flemke. Did you work with Richie Evans much? Or?
No, not a whole lot with Richie, but Richie and I were good friends. And after Richie passed, we ended up with Mike in some of Richie's cars. Billy Nazareth had built us a couple cars after that, and We won a lot of races in them cars. Mike liked them cars.
You know, a couple years ago, I was working for Speed Sport. Went down to Mike McLaughlin's shop to interview Max, just to chat with him because he was going to run a dirt car. This was just when he was starting his dirt car stuff, and in the shop they had the Coors Extra Gold car that was there, and also along with the Crazy Eight that was there. And the moment that I saw that car with the black and the gold and the number 12 on it, I was like, oh my God, I started to fanboy out, you know, because it was one of those RE chassis that Billy built. I'm pretty sure it was. But man, it took me right back, you know, to being a kid right away.
Actually, that car there was a car that Mike built.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't the Ritchie car.
Okay.
We had a couple of Ritchie cars, but I want to tell you a story about that car because it's funny. That car, we spent a lot of time on that car, and that car was as small built as you could get it. Because, you know, Mike was a small individual.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, the only one that could ever fit in that car was Mike. No one else could drive that car. I don't know if anybody knows that. And Scott Zipadelli's, Greg's brother, younger brother, is the one that restored that.
Oh, okay.
Get it back to the condition it's in that you've seen it.
Okay.
Because it was a one-of-a-kind car.
You know, it's so funny, too, because, you know, we've had Todd Bodine on the show, and I know Mike McLaughlin. We haven't had him on the show. But, like, those guys are drivers that were also beautiful fabricators. You know, they can also build beautiful things, too. Like, you don't see that much nowadays. So.
Them guys were magical fabricators.
Really?
Mike and Todd, Brett, all three of them guys build anything.
Really?
Reggie's another one. Reggie can build anything.
Yeah, we had Reggie on the show, and he was telling me that, you know, it was usually him that was reclipping the cars when he was driving for Mario.
Yeah.
They were doing it himself with just I-beams on the shop floor and stuff.
Yeah, Reggie's very, very good fabricator.
Yeah. So now, so when did you, going back a little bit, you were at Plainville. Is that where you first met Billy Carrazzo and got hooked up with the Sherry Cup team?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Because they were all from that area, you know. Billy, they were in Berlin. And they drag raced before they oval raced. So once they started to build oval race cars is when I met them. Gino Spada was driving one of their coupes, which I brought a picture of it here somewhere. We'll get to it.
We'll get to it in a second.
Yeah, and that's how I met them guys. And when Billy Zanobi, we ran probably 4 or 5 years because we branched out. We ran Waterford, we ran Seekonk, we ran Plainville, Riverside Park, Westboro. We started to branch out, run over, and we were competitive. We won a bunch of races, so. As long as Ronnie drove it, we kept going. And then finally, Billy said, you know what, this is costing us too much money and then time. And he got married and stuff. And so we just sold the car. And then that's when I got involved with the Carrazzos, right after that.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. So you went to work, right, for the factory, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you worked in the factory during the day, and then the race car at night.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the funny part is like you were working on the car like for free, like for the fun of it. It wasn't to get paid or anything like that, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. So what were those years like? I mean, God, my first early memory of like the Sherry Cup cars, well, the earliest one was that number 12 coupe car that Ron Bouchard drove. It was Ron Bouchard. And then, of course, when I was a young kid, Brett Bodine came on the scene with the neon car. And that was the other thing, too. Billy was using neon before anyone even thought of it. How did that all come about? You were telling me last night when we chatted.
Billy was a stickler on looks, and he didn't want to be like everybody else. He wanted something that stood out. Well, neon in them days was non-existent. You know, it just didn't. There was no wrapping of cars or anything like that. Well, he researched it and found that it was a safety paint. They use it to be highly visible in factories and fire departments and stuff like that. So he found this supplier that made this paint. But it wasn't easy this process wasn't perfected. It wasn't easy. The product to cut the paint was called toluene, and it was a toxic substance. It was hard to get.
Really?
But he found a place where he could get the paint, the thinner, and found the process of how to do it and the special clear you needed to keep the ultraviolet sun from fading it too bad because it faded like crazy in the daylight.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, overnight it would change tint by two shades if you didn't have this special clear.
Really?
Well, he found all this stuff, and it was at a safety place he found it. So no one knew it, and no one could get it because he's the only one who knew where it was.
Right.
And he come home with it, and I think Greg's dad, Chick, is the one that painted the first time with it. And he had a base coat the car white, like everybody knows it now because everybody makes that stuff. It's a lot easier today, but base coat it white, and then 3 coats of this, 3 coats of that, and then when it was all done with the clear on top. It was a process.
It's just, and you guys were like one of the first teams to ever have it. Like I remember being a kid watching that bright number 12 car in the grandstands because it just stood out over everyone else. It was almost like the car glowed.
It did too. It was you could shut the lights off in the shop at night when you were leaving. That car would glow sitting there.
So what were some of the great memories you have from being with that 12 car? Because God, you were with that 12 team for a while, which I really don't think people give that Carrazzo team that much credit for because you guys were around through the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s.
Yeah, long time. I had 2 stints with them. I had an early stint was back with the John Steiger days when John Steiger kind of like headed the operation as far as how we were going to race, And, Chick was involved, myself, Andy Colicchio, and we're all volunteers. Some of us worked for the shop, Sherry Cup during the day. Everybody worked on the car at night or weekends. Nobody got paid. You got paid for your job, your normal job. So we had a great bunch of guys. We enjoyed being with each other, and we had so much fun doing it. I mean, Chick built all the engines himself. Every engine we had in them days, Chick had built it. Big block, small block, I don't care what it was. And he made some serious horsepower with them things out of his garage behind his house.
This is Greg Zipadelli's father.
Yeah.
See, that's the other thing, too. I don't think a lot of the racing world knows is that, Greg Zipadelli is a huge name in NASCAR. Yeah. His father, was around before him doing racing stuff, too.
That's, it all goes back to good stock and roots.
Right.
Scotty and Greg were little kids running around the shop. We were building them engines in there, So they were around it their whole life. They were around the cars their whole life. They grew up in it,
Right.
So it was a natural for them. And we just had a blast doing it. But to haul them bodies, the coupes, we had to go to junkyards and find them. And you haul them out of a junkyard, and you spent a week cleaning and grinding to separate the outside panels from the inner panels.
Really?
To get that body where you could use it. And the chassis were like 55 and 56 Chevrolets, I think. And if you could find a California chassis, it had no seams in it. And that was the hot ticket to find one of them because they were stronger.
Really?
And Steiger and I would take chisels and hammers by hand and chisel every bracket off of them things, grind them. I mean, there was a tremendous amount of work to build one of them cars.
Very primitive to how it is done today.
So primitive, you can't believe it.
Right?
But, it was a craft. And you had to be a crafty person. All them guys, all the Plainville Stadium guys, everybody built their own cars. You couldn't buy one.
Right. That was the thing. I like to think that, I came out of that era where guys built their own stuff. And when you heard about somebody building a car, you were anticipating what it was going to look like because you knew some guys were better fabricators than others. And you saw what they built. And some of these guys were building works of art, just beautiful stuff.
Oh, yeah. Junkyards in them days were thriving. There was junkyards everywhere. And that's where we got all our parts from. You spent days in the junkyard looking for this stuff.
Do you think it takes away from that creative and artistic way of building a car now where you can order your stuff out of a catalog?
Well, time passes on and progress, you're not going to stop progress,
Right.
It just happens. To do it like that today, you probably wouldn't be able to run these races like that today because there's too many of them and you need too many cars. It would take you too long to build them. So, modernizing the system allowed the races to go the way they are, to have this many, you know.
Right. But what you're also doing too by building all of this stuff is you're learning your craft. Like you're becoming a master at what you're doing. Do you still enjoy like the creative and the building part of it?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, like, most of us have hot rods or custom cars or something on the side that we've done. And, I'm no different. I got a 66 Mustang that we restored and a 34 Ford sedan we built with a flathead in it.
Okay.
So that's my old-time tinkering.
So that's like what? That's your hobby thing, doing hot rods and stuff?
That's the hobby thing, yeah.
Okay, building the hot rods. Okay. Yeah. What about any of the short track stuff? Do you get back to any of the modified races or just kind of help or give any input to some of these short track guys on the weekends, like the Smart Tour or anything?
Nobody really asked for much intake because, the cars are a little different. And they pretty much got them figured out what they're doing. But we go to Martinsville, we've gone to the final race and a couple of the spring races then when they're here. Caraway once in a while when the Smart Tour is there. Bowman Gray's wonderful, freaking enjoyment as hell. It reminds me of the old Plainville Stadium. Yeah. It's awesome to go there, watch the races and the fights.
Were there that many fights at Plainville also?
Oh, we used to have them.
Really?
Oh, we used to have them.
Like what? Like what happened?
Some of them drivers there, like the tough guys, like they were good drivers, George Lombardo's and them people, Mordino, Jap, but piss them off, they just don't get out of the car and fight with you than to beat you on the racetrack. They're going to beat you, teach you a lesson.
Yeah, it's a lot different than what it is now because you got so many kids out there.
Yeah, I mean these guys were. George Lombardo was one of the strongest persons I ever met. He was a well digger. That was his company.
Okay.
And Jesus, what a strong man. He had hands the size of my head.
Now, is this the same George Lombardo that ended up owning midgets later in his career? He had a midget for a little while?
I don't know, Derek. I'm not sure about that.
Because there was a guy named George Lombardo that ran in NEMA with us, and he was a car owner. And matter of fact, I think Scott Zipadelli drove the car one or two races or something like that.
It could be because George, was in the New Britain area. He stayed. And George died a few years ago, but he was around for a long time. Yeah. He drove for the Delana brothers out of New Britain, which everybody knew them too. They're He's good people, great people. They ran a parts store and they try to help everybody they could help,
Now, moving on, we got to chatting last night. You were telling us about how you guys were running at Dover years ago with, I think it was Maynard Troyer driving.
No, Eddie was driving.
Eddie was driving.
We had a Corvair we built at Sherry Cup.
This was what you said to me was a late model modified.
Model modified, they called them.
Now, what year was this?
Like I told you, I couldn't remember the year, but someone around here that ran them got to remember because they only ran them for 1 year.
Right.
And then they brought them back a few years later, and you will remember the Daytona years when Richie had the Camaro, and Maynard had that full-body car, and Cook had one. And
right, Pee Wee Griffin.
Pee Wee had one. We had one.
Rusty.
Car. Everybody had one. They made us run the Super Speedway.
They had the Speedway modifieds.
Yep.
Right? Now, were you were at those races?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I've only seen like a few video clips here and there. What were modifieds like on the 2.5 mile track at Daytona?
They were fast.
Yeah.
In fact, that's why they took them out. They were so fast. We were the first ones to go 200 miles an hour.
The modifieds were.
The modifieds were. Richie was the one.
And these were full-blown, big block modifieds. They're the 427 modifieds, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Richie had a Hutter big block in his car. And I'll never forget, Neil Bonnet it was either Neil Bonnet or Darrell Walter was behind him in this race. And they took off on a restart. And when Richie shifted into third gear, black tire marks from both rear tires. He left in third gear.
Really?
And when that race was over, we got to talking, and I think it was Neil was behind him, and Neil said, I ain't never seen a car with that much power to spin the tires in third gear off of a restart.
Wow.
than that car did right there.
And they only ran those races for 2 years at Daytona. What was it, 79 and 80? Or?
Sounds about right.
Okay.
And then they took us to the road course.
Richie won both of them, right?
Yep.
Richie won both of them. But those were not like, they didn't have like the truck arms like the Cup cars had in them.
No, they had truck arms.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
Okay.
they had truck arms in them.
So they did have, okay.
They had the independent front end.
Okay.
You know, they didn't have no straight axle in them. It was independent front end, but they had truck arms.
Okay. So was it, can I explain, was it a modified underneath or was it a stock car with a big modified
It
engine?
was more of a late model type car with a big engine in it.
Okay. But I remember guys would come out with these wild designs. They had these long noses on them. Like I remember Pee Wee's car had this super long
It had a
nose.
chassis under it. It had a chassis like a built chassis with that body on it. It wasn't a unibody car.
Okay.
It was a built chassis under it.
Okay. But they were just way too fast and
They were too. I think we were embarrassing the Cup cars at that point,
oh really?
going too fast.
Oh, okay.
And well, actually, Maynard had spun his around backwards, and it blew the back window right out of it once it got backwards.
Really?
And that window cleared the fence, and I think it scared NASCAR a little bit that, something bad was going to happen.
The back window, I guess what, the air inside just blew it out?
The air got inside the car when it turned around backwards, and it just blew the back window right out of that car.
Was he in a Camaro also?
I think he was in a Pinto.
Really?
Yeah, or a Falcon. Could have been a Falcon.
Modified.
A Ford-bodied car.
I would have loved to. Those super speedway body cars were just wild because they also ran them like at Trenton, at Pocono.
Yep.
I remember seeing a lot of those guys show
Couple
up.
years we ran them. Yep. Kenny Bouchard drove our full-bodied car at Pocono, and we finished second.
Do you have any pictures of those cars by any chance with you?
No, I didn't see any of them. I wish we had some.
Those modified years at Daytona always fascinated me because it was, our type of cars on a super speedway stage. I actually didn't know many people. I didn't even know that you were there for those events. So they ran the ovals first and then the road courses?
Yeah.
Okay.
Once they figured out they had to get us off the big track, then they put us on the road course.
Okay. Which was, you guys, what did you guys think of that? Did you think it was?
It was like our first experience with it, but it was fun.
Okay.
We actually had a good time with it.
Bobby Allison won the race, right?
Yeah, I think he did.
How many years did they do the road course races
I think
there?
we only did it twice, too.
Only twice?
Yeah.
Okay. So at what point did you think to yourself or say to yourself, I can go and do this for a living or work in, the sport of NASCAR for a living? Because, you had been the crew chief on the 12 car for years. You were the crew chief when McLaughlin won the championship, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What was that like for you guys to finally win that modified championship?
Pinnacle of the sport,
Yeah.
like they say. And that's what you do it for, to get to that day where you can say you're the champions,
Mm-hmm.
And it was my biggest moment in racing at that time was that,
Really?
And the other big moment was winning the Race of Champions with Brett.
Okay.
In,
At Pocono, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because that was a race everybody wanted to win.
It's
The
huge.
hardest race in the world to win, especially at Pocono because there was 300 cars there.
And you guys had started like 50 cars in the race,
50,
right?
50 cars started the race, yeah.
It's unheard of today. Could you imagine a 50-car field race? You wouldn't be able to get it finished.
Nope.
Just amazing.
And I think we started that many at Trenton. A couple of years we ran there before they closed it up.
Trenton was another fascinating place. A lot of people that I talked to that have come on the show, they loved it. What did you think
I
of
loved
Trenton?
it. I love Trenton.
What was it about it?
It was just fast. It was a big track, and we didn't run too many big tracks back then, that big.
Oh, really?
It was a mile and a half.
Mm-hmm.
The first time we ran it, it didn't have the dog leg in it. It was an oval.
Mm-hmm.
Then they put the dog leg in it because it was too fast. And the dog leg made it really, really tricky because that was the key to Trenton. If you could flat foot through the dog leg,
Really?
you could have a hell of a lap. And people, I remember Leo Clary looking at it, and he's coming over, and Bugsy and Freddie are there, and we're just in a circle talking, and Leo says, "You flatten footing through that corner back there?" And they said, "Well, yeah, you got to." Leo says, "I can't do it."
Really? No, this is when Leo was in the T5?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, Leo was in the 41.
Oh, okay.
And Leo said, "I can't do it." And Freddie said, "Why not?" And he says, my foot won't stay there. He said, Because everybody, from looking from the front side, you just think it's a little jog.
Right.
Well, you drive around a racetrack, it's a left-hand turn.
Yeah.
There's a stoplight there in case they pile up.
Right.
Because you can't see.
Yeah. Trenton always was fascinating because I had been there twice as a little kid. So I have scattered memories of it, but watched videos of it and how the place looked. And if you were sitting in the grandstands, it didn't look like it was a hard right turn in the kidney bean.
Yeah.
But the backstretch, I looked at it in video from other shots, and they're making a right turn.
It is a hard right turn. You can't see through there. So finally, Leo gets the balls enough to do it, I guess. So they said, well, how'd you do it? He says, well, I took my other foot, put it on top of my throttle foot, and he says, and I wouldn't freaking let off the gas.
Really?
And he finally made it through there.
Did any guys go off the end of the dog leg?
No. There was some crashes there, spins there, but nobody ever went off. I remember Teddy Wisnowski clearing the turn one wall and ended up down in the parking lot where that mall used to be down there.
Really?
He ended up in the parking lot.
Okay. So what was it like when you show up to a place like Trenton and 300 cars are there? Is it like, are you saying to yourself, oh, shit, we're in for a long day?
It was a circus.
Really?
You had to get there the day before. You parked in the grass field outside. And at that time, the New Jersey State Police were in charge of the racing.
They still are.
Yeah. So they did the inspections. And the big thing there was you had to have a fuel shutoff valve. And we're up north, we didn't have to have that. So the first year we go down there, everybody's panicking. No fuel shutoff valves. We had to put them in down there. So everybody's finding hardware stores and buying valves and ball valves and hose and just to put the shutoff valve in, because you couldn't get a sticker without the shutoff valve.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you finally did get through inspection, I mean, then it's what practice with like 300 other cars out there.
Yeah, they let them out in groups.
Right.
They didn't let everybody go out.
Right.
I don't know, maybe 30 at a time. And, you just got in line as you went, and you worked on your car. I mean, you had a whole day of practice, I think. We were there for 3-4 days.
Who were you there with? Who was your driver?
Bill Dennis, actually, from the South, drove the 12 car in that race.
Okay, I've heard the name, Bill Dennis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Billy wanted somebody different. He hired Bill Dennis to drive that race. I don't think we did very well, but we were there. We made an attempt.
Did you also run the Race of Champions on the 2.5 mile at Pocono too?
Yes. We ran it twice.
Look at all this historic stuff you've been involved in. Like,
it's been a long time.
Holy, like modifieds on a 2.5 mile at Pocono. I mean, was that as fast as Daytona?
It was fast.
Was it really?
If I recall, I think it was around 170 mile average, maybe.
Average.
Which
means you're doing 180, 185.
90, probably down the straightaway. Yeah.
In a modified.
But a full body modified.
Right.
We had to run them full body cars when we ran the big track.
At Pocono.
Now,
this is also where you guys are experimenting with aerodynamics and all of that kind of stuff, right?
And if I recall, Derek, maybe it was you could run either or, but you were at a disadvantage if you ran the regular modified. Putting a windshield in your car and all and trimming it all out for aero was the way to go. Kenny drove our car, and we took the full body car there, and we ran good. We ran second, I think.
Ken Bouchard.
And we might have had a shot of winning, but
wait, Ken or Ron?
Kenny drove it.
Really?
Yes.
At Pocono on the 2.5 mile.
Yes, Kenny drove it.
No kidding.
And we had a shot, but Greg Sachs blew up. He was driving the 18.
Bush Masika's car.
Yeah, and it was an oil shitstorm. Kenny run the last 2 laps with his head pushed the window net out, looking out the side of the car because he couldn't see through the windshield.
No kidding.
So we had to slow down a little bit, and we ended up second.
No kidding. You gotta be. Now, back then, let's see, Pocono's 2.5 miles, and how many, it was what, 100 laps back then?
It was 150.
150 for modifieds on a 2.5 mile track.
Yep.
That's insane.
Yep.
I mean, I couldn't imagine what your body must have felt like after that, because that's also, there's no power steering back then either, right? 1970?
No. Some people had it.
Some did.
Yep.
Oh, my God.
Some people had it. And a lot of people were in defiance of that back then. A lot of the car owners sent entry blanks in that said 3/4 mile track only. In other words, they weren't showing up if they put it on the 2.5, but they put it on the 2.5 that year.
Really?
think they only did it once,
Well,
maybe twice.
2 years in a row. I think.
Okay. Then they went back to the 3/4.
Yeah, but
Too much complaining. Nobody wanted to go.
really,
Too expensive.
what on engines and equipment?
Engines, you had to have that special car, really, if you wanted to do good.
Was the purse bigger for the 2.5 mile race?
I think it was the same.
Really?
Yeah.
But you know what though? Look at the education that you're getting within that time. I mean, you're getting to go to super speedways with a modified. I mean, you're learning aero, in the early years of doing aerodynamics, because what they're doing now is just crazy with aero on the cars.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everything.
Being around the Cup stuff, I learned a lot and seen a lot. Spending days and nights in the wind tunnel, just because it was part of my job, you got to see what does what.
Yeah.
All the things back in my day was a guess. You wonder, you tape little strings on the car and sent it out so you could kind of watch the strings, take a picture of it.
Right.
Or oil can the car up some so when it came in, you could see where the oil went down the side of the car.
What do you mean oil can? You mean spray oil?
Spray oil on it.
On the car?
On the car, on the body, and just go out and run and kind of see where the oil went.
Okay.
To get an idea where the air was going.
You know what? Really quick, just to get off spraying oil on the car, I had heard a story, and maybe you can verify it. Lenny Bowler used to spray the whole body of his car down with spray silicone before going out on the racetrack.
Lenny did a lot of classic stuff.
Did it really?
Lenny was one of my heroes.
Really?
Lenny was a great close friend. I bought a lot of my parts from Lenny.
Yeah.
Lenny and Julie Casella. That's where I bought I split it up because they were both good friends of mine. And Lenny was a classic, let me tell you.
Really?
I learned a lot of stuff from Bowler, and a lot of stuff Lenny did was classic.
Like what?
I mean classic. He'd build a brand new engine, and he'd spray oil on that engine and throw dirt at it so nobody knew he had a fresh engine in that week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. That was like his thing. He was like really big at mind screwing with people, right?
Them cars looked ugly for a reason. He wanted them to look ugly.
Right.
But everything underneath them cars was good.
Right.
Fresh.
That
wasn't going to break.
That was his whole theory. Like, it doesn't have to be pretty to be fast, right?
He knew what parts meant what was going to keep the car together, and he concentrated on what was going to keep the car together. And he was such a comedian. He was so funny. When Freddie drove for him, we had the best times at Thompson and at Stafford.
Fred DeSaro?
Yeah, we used to part together. We were all tremendously good friends. I mean, we raced, and fortunately, we didn't get in too many jingles between our drivers, so we all got along good. When the races were over, we drank beer in the parking lot till the sun came up.
Okay.
And then we all came home, and it was really great. I mean, there was times Freddie would say to Lenny, Lenny, if we had another tire or two, I think we can really get him tonight, So then Freddie'd walk off, go do whatever he's going to do. And Lenny said, he'd have a used tire, but it was pretty fresh, Still had some, centerline marks on it and stuff. So he'd go get a label off somebody else's tire, stick the label on that right front tire, and then turn that tire so he knew when Freddie got in that car, he was going to see that label and think he had a brand new tire on there. That's the kind of stuff he did. Mind games. Funny.
He was good at it, huh?
Oh, he was. And he would, he'd look over at me. He said, "Watch this,"
That's great.
And Fred never knew, and none of us told him either.
That's amazing. It's so funny though, because the stories that you're telling me, like, you've seen so much innovation from things happening on a string to now being done with lasers.
Yeah.
Like, what has been like some of the biggest, most surprising things that has changed the face of racing since you've been around it?
I would prefer the string and the tape over any of the stuff they use today.
Really?
Lasers and roller arms. I mean, we're down to 10,000ths of an inch here.
Really?
You're not going to convince me that, and I argue with my guys today,
right,
that 10,000ths of an inch on that body is going to make you win that race, because it's not. I don't care. You can tell me until I'm blue in the face. It's not going to do it. I don't believe it.
And what, the younger kids in the shop say different?
Well, the engineers are all about engineering.
Oh, okay.
They're not about common sense. They engineer.
Oh.
The sim says this.
Right.
Well, the sim can't be wrong. The sim's going to work.
Right.
Well, the sim is only as good as the information put into the sim.
Uh-huh.
If that information is not good, that sim information is not good.
Now, when you say the sim, for the people that are listening or watching at home that aren't as deeply versed in racing, explain what the sim is.
Well, sim is short for simulation.
Mm-hmm.
And the simulation is because of the way the races are today, there's no practice.
Mm-hmm.
So for you to get a starting point to go there, you have to have some sort of information to set your car up.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get there, you're in the ballpark. You know, you're not dragging the ground. You're not out in left field somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So they map all these racetracks. And when they map them, they feed them into the simulation program that gives you a starting point. Springs, shocks, bars, you know, whatever you need, wedge, percentages, nose weight, right, all that stuff. You can change things in there, and it gives you what it does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this will make you 10% tighter. This will make you 10% looser if you do this, if you do that. But it's based on numbers that are put into it, which is based on mechanical grip numbers and aerodynamic numbers.
And they get them from what? From testing?
Testing.
Okay.
And shaker rigs and shock information.
Okay.
And wind tunnel information.
So all this data, is this the stuff that goes into the 7-post rig that we see the car on when the wheel and the tires are moving? Right.
Yep. That track map data runs that lap on the track on that car. Mm-hmm. They put the aero information in there as a map that gives them the downforce numbers. Mm-hmm. So there's a balance point in there between mechanical and aero grip. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're playing with. In these cars today, they've taken, you know, they've been trying to take the downforce out of them, but they added downforce to the bottom. So the new cars create everything through the diffuser. The downforce from the top of the car is still there, but it's not as much as it used to be. Mm-hmm. And you're not allowed to mess with it like you used to. Mm-hmm. So most of your downforce is through the bottom.
Okay, now for the listeners at home, the diffuser is
at the rear of the car, that box you see back there with the stakes on it. Mm-hmm. The air going through there is pulling the back of the car down. That's giving you your downforce, because these new cars, the old cars with the metal bodies, if you notice, the quarter panels in the rear would be straight down or flared out, you know. That was giving the car what we called side force. And in the wind tunnel, you could get the side force numbers. These new cars, because of the way they're made, have no side force. So now you need more downforce.
Okay.
There's nothing holding the car from busting loose.
Okay.
So the diffuser creates all the rear downforce.
Okay. So the spoiler doesn't come into it that much anymore?
Only on the top side. It's making downforce.
Okay.
The top side downforce is nowhere what it used to be. Mm-hmm. Like if we were making 1,600 pounds of downforce before, we're making 500 pounds of downforce now off the top of the car. Okay.
Okay.
They're trying to make the car harder to drive, so it puts the driver in the equation. Mm-hmm. But with the horsepower gone, you know, everybody's flat foot.
Yeah,
it's back to the car. Whose car's better, you know?
You know, it was so funny. I was talking with one of the Cup drivers, a notable name, I won't say who. Excuse me. He was saying if you want to make the racing good again, he said, raise the ride heights 2 inches, give us a shitload of horsepower, and take away the aero.
Exactly right.
Yeah, he's already told me. He said,
my opinion, exactly. That's how you fix it.
Yeah.
But, you know, like Jim Phelps said, and he's thinking about the owner's pocketbooks. If you add horsepower, you put another 100 horsepower in there, you're adding to the cost.
Okay.
Because the engines now are scheduled to go 6 races. They're sealed, and you got to run them 6 races.
Okay.
So you're not spending money on rebuilds. Well, if you do that, is it going to go 6 races, or is it only going to go 4?
Okay.
You know, the engine builders would have to figure that out and tell them.
So these engines are built and sealed, and
yes,
and that's it. Okay, so they
you got to run six races on each one.
See, it's so different from back in the day, because back in the day, remember, teams were building their own engines, and you know,
Derek, you can't do anything today. It is, like we said earlier, it is ruled to death, and I am so sick of watching this electronic rule book. You can put a rule in or take a rule out with a snap of a finger.
Really?
You need a group of people to just read the rules every week when they come out.
Really?
Because it changes that fast.
Okay. Now, why is it changing that fast?
because it's electronic and they're allowed to do it.
Oh, okay.
Before, you had to write them, so you only wrote them during the off season. Jerry Cook used to proofread the rules, and it'd come out in that little book. You've seen that little book they used to give you.
Right.
And if they had something come up during the year, they put out a bulletin.
Okay.
And they made a change.
Okay.
So they still use the bulletin idea, but the bulletin comes on the computer, and it comes out instantly. Like every Thursday, you'll get bulletins. Okay. And they'll be changing something. It could be anything. It could be procedure. Don't necessarily have to be a car rule.
Okay. Right.
But the access, it's just so easy to do today.
Now, let's bounce back a little bit. At what point did you say, okay, I'm getting out of the Northeastern modified scene and I'm coming down south?
That was in '89. I got a call from Todd Bodine. Todd was with us at Sherry Cup after Brett left. He was driving the modified for a bit.
Todd drove the 12 car?
Yeah, once in a while. We just hit and miss. We weren't racing full time then. Okay. And he drove it. He drove it a couple of times. He did pretty good at Stafford. Finished sixth or so his first time out. With the sway bar broke, so we did all right. But he was him and his buddy Mike LaJoy. Connie LaJoy up in Seacock.
No, I know the LaJoys. Mike ran midgets with us in
Yes,
Yuma.
Yes, Mike ran midgets. And Connie was his dad, and he liked Todd. And the kids got hung together. Right. And they were doing some modified racing at Seacock. So
I heard the story of the dump truck motor.
Yeah, Connie let him take the motor out of the dump truck so they could make the race that one night because they blew up. And they did it. Right. And then he made him put the motor back in the dump truck Monday because it had to work on Tuesday. So Todd ran up there for a while. And then he came down south here and he went to work for, because Brett was down here. And Brett says, you need to come down here if you're going to do anything. So he went to work for Ted Condor, who was at that time running Kyle Petty in a Busch car. Okay. And I think Felix Sabatos was involved in it some too. And Todd went to work there as a fabricator because he's another one that could fabricate pretty damn good. He was a good fabricator. Yeah. So he went to work for Ted and them, and Kyle ran a limited schedule. And he would come to New Hampshire, and we were there, just up there watching the race, up there hanging around watching the race. And I asked Todd how he was doing and everything. He said, yeah, it's a pretty good job. He says, I'm going to get to drive this every once in a while when Kyle can't do it, I says, well, that's a good deal. So I didn't think nothing of it. We left, and Todd ran a race or two in it. And I get a call about 6 months later from Frank Cece up in New York, who used to sponsor Jimmy Spencer in the modifieds, the quick stop beverage car. So Frank says, hey, he says, Jimmy was driving for him in the Busch Series in the South in 88 and 89. Okay. And they had a small team, and Jimmy was going to move up to Cup.
It was their 24 car, right? Didn't they have a Busch 20 that looked like the modified?
Yes. Okay. They bought the car from Tommy Houston. I think I told you the story that they bought the Daytona 300 winner at the racetrack. Right off the racetrack, engine and all, they bought it from Tommy Houston.
Right out of Victory Lane?
Yes, because they wanted the car exactly. They didn't want to they thought if they take it back home, they would take all the good stuff off of it. Oh, okay. And Tommy said, I'm not going to do that, but if that's what you think, I'll sell it to you right now. And Tommy sold him the car. Okay. So that's the car they started with, and they had another one. They had two, and they ran a couple of years. They had some success, I think. So anyway, Jimmy was leaving, going to Cup race, and Frank calls me because he had no one down there to run the deal. And he says, I'm thinking of hiring Todd, and would you come to work for us? He would like to have you as, his crew chief, and I'd like you to run the thing for us. And I was working at Sherry Cup at the time. We weren't racing anymore. We were just spot racing, just having a good time. I was working at the factory and had a good job in sales. Okay. Paul, Billy's brother, always took care of us, made sure we had a job. And I said, yeah, what's it pay? And of course, it didn't pay much. It was like about $35,000 a year to go do it.
And this was 1989. 89, so, 30 grand.
And I had just built a new house and everything, and I had to move my family and everything. And I said, let me think about it, Frank. So then Todd calls me and he says, come on, do it. We can do this. I said, we'll build it up. So I talked to my wife, and she said, yeah, if you want to do it, do it. You've done this your whole life. You might as well keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So I did it. I moved down there. I came the first year by myself. They stayed up here.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it. And when I got there, I said, oh, my God.
What?
Shop was a mess. It was Herb Nab's old cup shop.
That's not me. I think that's you.
Hang on. I get down there, and it's Herb Nab's old cup shop. It's on a road called Rustic Road in Mooresville. It's a dirt road. There's no pavement on it. It's a dirt road. We get down in there. It's a 3-bay garage.
And the place was a mess?
There is crap everywhere. There's tires piled up on the side of the building. There's goats out in the front.
Goats?
Goats in the fenced-in field. There's goats out there. We open the doors. It's a rainy day. We open the doors. There's 2 cars in the whole place. One's in the body shop. One's in the main shop.
Okay.
There's a puddle the size of Lake Michigan in the building. You can't weld in there when it rains because you're going to get electrocuted.
Right.
I said, what the hell have we got ourselves into here, boys?
Now, was anyone working in the shop?
We didn't have any employees, just me and Todd at the beginning.
Oh, wow.
Then there's a guy named Tommy Boyles came.
Okay.
He's related to the Bushes.
Okay.
Kurt and Kyle and Tom. And he was the first employee before I got there. Frank had hired him. He was a leftover. But he was a good guy. Tommy was a really good guy. Tommy could do a little bit of everything. Electrical, plumbing, chassis setup, whatever, pit the car. Tommy was a good old boy. I like Tommy.
So you guys had to build the shop first before building cars?
No, we cleaned the shop out, and we went to work on that shop because we had to.
Uh-huh.
I got there in January. We went to Daytona in February.
Wow.
We had 1 car.
Wow.
And by the way, Derek, I did find that picture of the front page of the Daytona paper on fire.
Oh, the car?
Just like I told you.
Of Todd?
Seems like every time we went down there, we wrecked.
Really?
We never finished that race.
In the first couple of years?
Oh, my God. That race has haunted me for a long time.
Really? In what way?
I couldn't finish it.
With how many different drivers did you
I don't care which driver I took. Couldn't finish it.
Which driver did you take?
Todd, Mike McLaughlin.
Really?
Who else went down there with us? David Green.
No kidding.
Tim Fidoa.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Had you guys? So you had never won the Daytona Busch race?
No.
Okay. So
Still haven't to this day.
Okay. Is it? I'm guessing it irks the shit out of you.
It aggravates the crap out of me. We finished second once.
You got that picture? Let's see it.
Yeah, I got it here.
You said you got the picture. Now, this was when Todd was on fire?
Yeah. Well, we were involved in a big wreck. It was actually Nemechek on fire.
Okay.
And Todd had to help get Joe out of the car.
Oh, no kidding.
Because they were like buddies, you know?
Right. Amazing. And this was the beginning of the C.C. Welliver empire, right?
Yeah, this is it.
Here it is, right here. Oh my God! Let me hold this up for the camera.
That's what every Sunday, the Daytona paper, we were on the front page like that.
Every Sunday,
every year it seemed like that. There we were, involved in some kind of wreck on fire.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh my God! But Todd was. I guess he was also learning too in the beginning of that.
Yeah,
too.
He was learning. He was a raw rookie. I mean, he had a few races under his belt with that Sapco car, but not enough.
Right.
Even on the short tracks, he was pretty raw.
Yeah.
But on the bigger tracks, he was really raw. But he had speed.
Really.
Don't get me wrong. He was very, very fast. He was aggressive as hell.
Really.
Sometimes too aggressive for his own good.
Okay. Yeah.
And like I said to you, it's very hard to take a slow driver and speed him up.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to take a fast driver and slow him down some.
Right.
And sometimes his peers will do it for him.
What do they say? It's easier to pull a rope than push one. Right?
Yes. and his peers, like, he did a dumb move at Charlotte one time against Dale Jarrett.
What did he do?
Running to the side of him when he didn't have to,
Okay.
Took them both out of the race.
And this is why you were crew chief in the car?
Yep. I get in there and I said, what the hell are you doing? What did you do that for? And he's like in tears, like, well, I didn't mean to. Well, you still did it. You drove it in there too hard.
Right.
And right behind me is Dale Jarrett. And Dale goes in there and talks to him.
Okay.
And so I said, his peers helped him too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because mistakes, they'll put up with him for a little while as a rookie, but don't keep making the same mistake.
Very different from what we are seeing today, right? With all these kids driving. And what is what is the big thing that gives you the concern with this newer generation of driver, the win at all costs, take you out on the last lap kind of stuff?
It's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
You don't impress anybody doing that.
Yeah.
And if you're in one of the other series and you're trying to move up, that's not what these car owners are looking for.
Right.
Race somebody, race them hard, but race them clean.
Right.
Last lap, don't take the guy out intentionally. I mean, you can bump and run a little bit sometimes. They all do it.
Yeah.
But do it the right way.
Yeah.
Race the guy the way you want to be raced.
I get into arguments with people on social media and all that because I am just so against the whole Rubbins racing mentality. I mean, I can understand, door rubbing a little bit when you're side by side and everything, but just going in even the bump and run drives me nuts because, you have to use the bumper to punt someone out of the way to take the lead. If you have to pass them like that, you didn't earn the spot.
Well, do you agree in blocking then?
What's that? No, not at all. I think blocking is bullshit.
Well, some of the bump and run is because somebody overblocks.
Yeah.
A little tap to let somebody know, hey, I'm here. I ran you down. I'm faster than you.
Right.
Give me a lane. I don't care which lane. You want me to go around the top side? I'll go around the top side. You want I'll go around the bottom. But give me a lane.
Right.
So now you don't, and you block them, and you continually block them.
Right.
Don't get mad if he sends you. That's not his fault.
I get that.
Okay, so there's the other side of it.
Right. No, I get it. I come from the open wheel world where, you got to give him space, because you can't touch. Like just this past weekend, the Snowball Derby, I was watching, I'm sure you saw the highlights all over social media. Yeah. When those two cars got in the corner, I mean, I'm sorry, but he was inside of him. Yep. He was far enough inside of him where you got to give him.
That was wrong. Yes.
Right. I mean, you can't go any lower. No.
That was wrong.
So you can't blame. The leader can't blame second place for doing that. He was in there.
Yeah.
He was in there. Yeah, I know.
He was far enough up there too. I mean, he was there. I mean, he should have just let him finish second.
We've been posing this question to all of the people that have come on the show for the season, and especially in today's form of racing, even at the cup level, what is the rush to get kids to the top level of racing?
I don't get that either, other to get them out of their families' pockets, maybe.
Really?
Because, it's costing the family a ton of money to race these kids to get them to that point, that they can't do the next step their own, because they just don't have that kind of money. So the push is to get them there.
Right.
So they get off the responsibility of paying for it. Because they want, if their kids got talent, naturally they want to see them get one of the top rides and go good, Well,
what about also the levels of like late models, ARCA, like that kind of stuff though too?
I truly believe you should come through the ranks like that, because I think there's where you learn and you practice your trade. And you sharpen your skills, But the way it is today, I don't know if you have enough time to do that, because you need to spend a couple years in each level and then move up,
Right.
And if you get to the top level and you're 30, are they telling you you're too old then?
Right.
I don't know what the owners are looking for today,
They're looking for young drivers. I get it.
Stuart Haas right now, we hired Josh Berry, who's 30. And I don't know, I think Noah's in his 20s maybe. So, Ryan's 30. And Eric was on the older side. Of course, Eric's gone now. But we have an older tender group, kind of.
Right. We had Todd Bodine on the show, and he told me he didn't start driving professionally until he was 27.
He started late.
Yeah, he started late. He still had an incredible career, and he talked about, like the younger generation of him owning a truck team. When he owns a truck team, his what?
I listened to that part of it. It made me laugh because
tell us what you told us.
He was the exact opposite. When he ever said if he owned a truck team. Now, working on the car, he did work on the car. I will give him that. He was a good worker, a hard worker. If he wrecked it, he did feel bad, but he wrecked plenty.
Yeah.
And he put himself in bad situations, and he would not listen. If I said to him, Todd, you have a seventh place car today. Do not try to drive it to second. Don't do it, because we're not going to learn nothing if we don't finish. Right. And if we can't run this car next week, we're not going to be able to advance this car, find out what we're doing wrong, because we got to spend a whole week fixing it. So we don't learn nothing. So don't do it.
Right.
First thing he does, bombs are down in there. I'm going to go for second. Next thing happens, he's in the fence. Exactly what I told him not to do. So I want to see the day when he tells his driver not to do that. I want to see what happens.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah, but you gotta at least give it to him though, because you said he did work on the cars.
He did.
But that is actually a great, I shouldn't say business pattern, but it is a great pattern to follow for someone to earn their job, to work on the car.
I love what he said. That's a great thing. I wish they were all like that.
Yeah.
Like you take Cole Custard and Riley Herbst. They ain't scared to work on them cars.
Good.
They're in our shop all the time working on them cars.
That's good. That's great to hear, because you don't hear. I mean, I see it a lot when I go out to the local dirt tracks here. These development teams have got these micro sprints that have got hired kids hopping in it, and they get out of the car and they're hanging out on their cell phone while the crew's putting the car back together or something like that. There's a few kids nowadays that I see that work on their stuff, like the Quapples, Carson and Caden, both super talented drivers, and they both get in there and they get their hands dirty.
It only makes them better.
Right.
Learn the car.
Right.
Learn what makes that car work.
Priest the same one.
Yeah,
he works on
Ryan will work on his cars. Yeah, always did.
Yeah.
Learn what makes them work. It's going to make you better. Here's another pet peeve I got between the North and the South.
Okay, what you got?
And we're still not fighting the Civil War, but...
You're going to piss some people off with this one.
No, it's a fact, and I think a lot of people will agree with it. Down here, they live by the world of time trials.
Yeah.
Up north, we live by the world of handicapping.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? How do you learn to drive through traffic?
Yeah.
By starting in the back. When you start on the pole every week because you're the fastest guy and you drive away from the field, you're not learning how to pass anybody.
Yeah.
90% of the country races that way. Why?
I like heat races. I've always been a fan.
Heat races. And the rule at Stafford was if you won a feature, you started no further forward than ninth.
Wow.
That was the handicapping. That was the handicapping rule.
Awarded. It was done by Money One, previous one.
And
week, right?
Phil Smith ran the system. Bless his heart, Phil. He was a good guy. And he handicapped Stafford.
Yeah.
And I think he did Thompson too. But it was a very fair system. But if you won the feature at Stafford, you started no further forward than ninth.
Really?
And you started backing them heat races.
Okay.
And you worked your way. You learned how to pass.
And, save your equipment too.
Save your equipment, save your tires, learn how to pass. Because you still had to make the show. There was more cars than there were spots to make, so you had to make it. A place like Riverside Park, it's hard to pass.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Like you said, moving down here for the first couple of years, just being an announcer, announcing at racetracks up north, I announced Stafford, Thompson, Seekonk, whatever. We called heat races and consies, and then the feature. Down here, I would talk by myself for hours, just calling one car at a time for time trials, because they would time trial everyone from the late models all the way down to the mini stocks. So I had to get.
And even if they time trialed and put them in the heats, they put them the fast cars in the front.
Yeah.
Why run the heat race?
Yeah.
It's not going to change anything.
Right.
Like the All-Star race out in California there.
Yeah.
Put the fast cars in the front.
You know what, though? I do enjoy the All-Star race and special events like the truck race at Eldora, where you have to race your way into the show. That, I think, is so freaking cool. Because you see these guys going at it. It's great. I love that part about it.
That makes you race. And learning how to pass people through heat races and starting to back of feature events makes you learn how to do it. Because I watch some of these kids, and you can tell they ain't had to pass many cars till they got here.
Okay.
Because they don't know how to do it.
Right.
They're so fast and they catch somebody and all of a sudden they're stuck behind them. And 4 or 5 more guys behind them catch them and they go around both sides of them.
Okay.
Until he sees them do that and figures out how they did it, then he goes back by. Meanwhile, he's lost 8 positions that are very hard to get back.
Yeah. I got you.
And you can tell.
You know, we've already seen, you know, the test of man and machine where a car can go 200 miles per hour for 500 miles. You know, that test of speed and endurance has been proven. Do you think that we need to get away from more of the endurance races and more to the exciting battle your way into the show type of formats? Because endurance races endure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like to see the shorter and segmented races where you got to go.
What's your opinion on the stage racing?
I like the stages myself because a lot of these tracks, the racing's not indicative when it goes too long. So having them stops and having the restarts makes the race interesting. To me, it does.
Does it? Okay.
I think so. I mean, a lot of people don't agree with that. They'd rather see the race go nonstop, you know, keep going. But I think anytime you get... Now, some of the tracks, like Charlotte lately, even that 600-mile race, the last 2 times have been very good. That race was entertaining from start to finish.
Okay.
From what it used to be.
Okay. Gotcha.
It was an excellent race, you know. But some years it's been a stinker. I mean, the year Martin Truex led all them laps and won that race, that race was not interesting.
Right. They all can't be barn burners.
No.
We both know
understand.
that. Some nights they're exciting, and some nights you can predict who's going to win.
And I think NASCAR is pretty good at watching and paying attention and know which ones need help. And they'll go test or they'll change a tire or they'll do something to try to fix it. And they fixed a lot of them.
Okay.
Like having a championship at Phoenix, I think has run its time out. I don't think that's a good race anymore.
Really?
I think the championship race should be moved around.
Every year?
I think every year it should be at a different place.
Okay.
It gives no one an advantage that way. When you're taking it down to only 4 cars have a shot at it, move it around.
Gotcha. Moving on to some other stuff. You know, like you've seen so many different eras of racing, from the modifieds, Cup, and all of that stuff. Do you follow like any of the modern modified technology that's going on with the new cars that are being built, the platforming of the cars and things like that, and experimenting with the coil binding and all that?
Not so much with that, no. I like to look at the cars when I get close enough to see them to see if anything's really a lot different.
Yeah.
Really haven't changed a whole lot from when I was there.
Right.
I mean, we coil bound springs back then.
Back in what, the 80s?
The 80s.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that was the other thing you were telling me. We were chatting. Like, you guys stumbled across coil binding by accident.
Yes,
right?
we found it by accident. I mean, people had found it way before we did.
Okay.
I think the Uris were on top of that long before anybody.
They had found, but you can probably explain this to me a lot better because you're a crew chief. But isn't coil binding dangerous in the sense that now it's like a go-kart? You've got no give. You've got, if you get out of shape or something, that's it. You're gone, right? I mean,
well, once you get used to it, you know what the feel is. Like back when we were doing it, you coil bound either the right or the left. You didn't do both.
Okay.
If you did both, you'd get in trouble.
Now they do both?
Now I think you can do both. I mean, these Cup cars they're just down on stops. I mean,
really?
Yeah, and that's in it because of the aero. They want to hold the attitude of the car in one position. But anyway, back in our day, actually, the earlier you got on that right front spring, because we always did the right, the better it felt. And once the driver knew what that feel was, he loved it. Because there's speed there.
Yeah.
Tremendous amount of speed there.
It's so different because, now everyone is sucked down to the track, sealed off. And, I remember watching the days of the cars doing the old up and down movements, they'd come off the corner, raise up, and then they'd drop or they'd land, before getting into the corner.
I still think that being bound up hurts races like Martinsville. Martinsville, you need to have let that car have its movement.
Oh, really?
And I think if you look lately, they've been doing that, and the race has been better there.
Okay.
I know in Stuart Haas's part, we've started to do that some. Let the car move a little, and we've run better.
Yeah. What do you think of these new cars now, which are more kind of like a modular car compared to the cars that you've run over the years with, the truck arms in it and the steel bodies and massaging the bodies. I mean, oh my God, I used to look at some of these cars and, the 1/4 panel was kicked in this way, the right rear was kicked out that way, and it looked like it had been twisted up even before hitting the track.
If you look at a Craftsman truck, they're still that way. When you look at one sitting on a straightaway,
They're all juked up.
It looks like it's bent in the middle, which is a cool look. I mean, I like them, and I love them days. And when the Gen 7 came, of course, naturally, I was against it. I fought it. I thought it was a terrible idea. All of this stuff. But as we evolved into it, and I got into it because I was there, I was involved in it, working with it after a while, said, you know what? Holy cow, this car, once we started messing with it and putting them together, is easy compared to what we used to do. You'd wreck a steel-bodied car with a one-piece chassis. That car was out of service for probably a month.
Really?
By the time you got it repaired, put the body back on it, fixed it, got it back to where you wanted it, and could race it again, probably 4 or 5 weeks went by.
Really?
These cars, you can wreck these cars. And I mean, need a clip. You could need both clips. And in 3 days, that car's back together. That's
Really?
how easy it is.
That quick?
That quick.
Wow.
And the plastic body now, being not metal, is so cool because, first of all, holds up better in the races. You've noticed that yourself. You can rub the wall. You can't kill it, but it's not like the steel body where it would crumble.
Really?
It's pretty strong.
Okay.
So, and the pieces bolt on. If you have a little problem in practice and you need a 1/4 panel, it bolts right on.
Okay.
By spending time with these cars, the safety issues we all had a problem with, and we all said at the beginning the cars are too stiff, and the chassis rails are too straight. There's not enough angles in them. But NASCAR addressed it finally, and they fixed most of it. I think they've got it where they want it now, and the drivers are pretty happy with it, I think. I don't drive one, so I don't want to speak for them, but I've seen where they crush now, and they crush a lot better, where they put all the slots and the lighter bars and the triggers and everything. So as far as we go, yes, I think the cars are much easier to work on. They're simple. There's a parts book that comes with it. Every part that goes in that car is in that book. Every bolt, nut, washer, whatever you want to know is there.
How different are they to set up compared to the old, truck arm style cars?
Easier.
Really?
They're easier.
Easier.
And they're more adjustable.
Really?
You got rear end adjustments. You got camera and caster rear end adjustments you can actually adjust.
Okay. So if everything is all spec, I guess you could say, how do you find that edge?
I think your edge now comes in the little tweaks that you can do, because there is tolerances in the body. They give you 150 thou.
150,000, and that is how much?
Well, 125 is 1/8 of an inch.
An eighth of an inch, which is what, like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
But now if you go max
is
it,
an eighth of an inch that much gonna win it for you?
No, but if you take that and you take it from the other side, now you got a total of 300. So if you can gain something by the whole 300, which is 3/8 of an inch, you might get a little advantage here or there.
Right.
It's not big, but it's a bunch of little things put together that give you the package.
Okay.
Yeah. The biggest thing I think on the new cars is the heights you run them at, because the diffuser is very sensitive, and if you shut some of the air off to that thing, you're losing your downforce. That's why you see these cars spin out so easy.
Oh, okay.
Is
that what it is?
It's very, very sensitive back there.
So if the car starts moving or it hits bumps or anything, will that take air away from the diffuser and lighten the car up and spin it?
It could.
Really?
Depends on how hard you hit the bump. If the skid block hits too hard, it'll unload just like a normal car would and get light and spin. So it depends on how hard you hit it.
Okay.
But the way they're stopped up, it shouldn't do that.
What about the cars getting airborne? We saw Priest take a big corkscrew flip down the backstretch at Daytona. What are they doing about the cars, getting lift?
I don't. The problem with that car now, when you get air under it, it's a flat bottom car.
Right.
The bottom sealed off.
Yeah, we saw that when we saw Priest get upside down.
It's going to take off naturally.
Okay.
So I'm sure some aeronautic engineer is going to figure out how to stop that. Now, I think they did something with the flap down there and something with the roof flap itself, too, to help in that area. So until it happens again, I guess we won't know if they've helped it at all. So
Okay.
but they work on things like that.
Okay.
You know, they
Gotcha.
constantly work on the safety of it.
Okay. Jumping back a little bit, last night you were telling me a funny story about going and running Oswego and Syracuse in the same weekend with the same car.
Yes.
You have a picture of it?
I brought something so I could show you. But yes.
Okay. We love this stuff. Yeah.
I wish I could remember the year. And if Billy Carazzo was with me, he would know the year because he's like a human book about what we did. But this was quite a long time ago because it was the 9X. And Denny Giroux was our driver. He was from Canada. And we decided that we were going to run the Oswego 250. And on the same weekend, that was Saturday night, Syracuse Dirt Week was going on. And they were running the Syracuse 200 at Syracuse on Sunday. So we said, you know what? Let's try to make the dirt race.
So now you're talking about what is Super Dirt Week
Dirt
now?
Week now.
Okay,
yes.
yeah.
It was Super Dirt Week back then, too.
Okay.
They were all there.
Okay.
And said, let's try to make the dirt race. I said, well, with the same car? Yeah, with the same car. Okay, I'm game. We're all game. Chick, it was Chick and me and John Steiger and Denny and Billy and a couple other guys, whoever went with us. Greg and them were too young to even remember this, I think. But anyway, we did it. We put some, chicken wire on the radiator and, put wire in the freaking roof and grooved the tires, got a tire iron. I was grooving the tires and Chick was covering up stuff on the engine and Denny. So we get to Syracuse and it rained the first day because we were up there on a Tuesday. Wednesday it finally dried out. There was mud everywhere, working in the mud. I mean, we ain't used to this stuff.
Right.
It was
sucks.
actually terrible.
You're probably like, this sucks, right?
It was terrible. It was muddy and it was a mess. So, but by Wednesday it dried out and we were allowed to get on the racetrack in the afternoon. So we go out there and naturally we're slower than crap. And Danny comes in, he says, I'm not used to this, in his Canadian accent. He's funny the way he talked. He says, I'm not used to this. He says, but I think it's going okay. He says, I just need to get more time. Goes back out, gets a little faster. Goes back out, gets a little faster yet. He says, maybe we could put some more grooves in the tire. So we grew some more grooves in the tire. Goes out, gets a little faster. He comes in, he said, the mud's hit me in the face. I got to get a mask. So he goes and buys one of them old leather masks. He looked like the guy from Halloween.
Michael Myers.
Yeah, with the two little eye holes in it. Kerchief on, the old school stuff, Goes back out, gets a little faster every time out. So we put another set of tires on, grooved them up, as best we could. He was out there. And
it's cold there in October too, right?
It was a pretty good weekend. It was not that bad yet.
Okay.
And he goes out there and he says, it feels pretty good. Let's wait. Okay. Because qualifying's coming up. This is the next day. So, okay. We draw the number. I forget where we go out. We go out probably mid-pack somewhere, right?
How many cars were there?
Over 100.
Really?
So it's all said and done, and here we are sitting ninth with an asphalt car. Because we had a big block in it,
You qualified ninth for the Super Dirt
ninth.
Week with a pavement modified.
Yes, sir. You could look that up because I'm sure it's there somewhere. I wish I could remember the year.
That's great.
And we said, holy cow, we're going to run. We're going to be all right here.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, it's Friday. Now we got to load everything up because we got to go to Oswego, which is not very far from Syracuse. A couple hours we were there because the real reason we're up there is to run the 250, the Bud race. So we take the chicken wire off and change tires and change gear and change all that stuff and get her loaded up and go to Oswego. And we go up there and we run our heat. And we're running good. He's fast. Denny always liked that place. It's fast. And get into feature, and I think we started, top 5 somewhere. And we sat and rode for a while, and we worked our way up like third. And he's, by lap 220, he's leading.
Really?
And we're stretching him now. We're about a half a straightaway ahead. And we're just cruising.
Was the dirt screen and everything still on the car?
No, we had to take all that stuff off.
Okay.
And we're just cruising along. And Billy says, you know what? I'm hungry. I'm going to get us some hot dogs. And we're leading the race. It's lap 225 out of 250. He goes to the thing, gets us hot dogs. By the time he comes out, the car's sitting in the pits, smoking, blowed up.
Oh, no. So you didn't get to win the 200.
We didn't win the 250.
And you didn't get to go to...
And we didn't go to Syracuse because we didn't have a spare engine.
Oh, God.
Heartbroken. We loaded everything up and we went home.
Oh, my God.
But it was something that you couldn't believe you could do it, but we did it.
Yeah, because it's unheard of today. The cars are so different, and
it was unbelievable.
That's crazy. All right, bouncing forward to the Frank Sisi stuff, getting hired finally to come down here. You came down here to work with Todd Bodine. This was at the beginning of the Sisi Welliver Busch Series empire.
Yes.
So eventually, you guys expanded from just 2 cars to like a 4-car team, right?
I think we got as many as 3. I don't think we had 4. We had Fidoa, David Green, Mike Cope. No, and Todd. We had 3 or 4.
But you had to set the whole thing up, right?
Oh yeah. Them guys stayed in New York. They came to the races, and they'd come down once in a while, visit, see how things were. You know, we'd meet, talk. Mostly we did everything over the phone. But Scott Welliver was a construction company. So I said, we're going to expand this thing. We're going to need a building.
Yeah.
We can't keep working on that shop. In the meantime, we had moved to Jimmy Spencer, had built a building not far from where we were in the Drag Strip Park, which was a new development in Mooresville.
Right.
That Schrader and a couple people owned. And Jimmy had built a pretty good-sized building there. And he was renting out pieces of it. So we rented a section from Jimmy to get out of the Herb Nab shop we were in because it was still a disaster. We fixed it up some, but it was still, we needed to get out.
Yeah.
And we rented a section from Jimmy and we moved up there. And even then I said, it was twice of what we had, but I said, eventually we're going to need our own place. So we started looking for land, and we found a piece of land on Stowe Road right by 49.
Okay.
And we built the first shop there. And I think that one.
Was in Harrisburg, right?
Yep.
Okay. I think I had gone past it before.
Yeah, it's the painting place now.
Right.
Big commercial painters.
But you were telling me last night, you had set the building up, or you had designed the building.
The second building.
The second building.
Yeah,
you had designed it to where it was like almost an assembly line to where the car started from straight tubing and then went out the door on the hauler.
Yep.
How did that all come? Like, which rooms went in succession?
It was we sat down with Scott. Scott helped me a little bit plan it out, but I had the ideas of how I wanted to flow. Flow was the ticket. The door that the steel came in, the truck pulled right there and delivered the steel to the rack. And then the plates to build the chassis were right next to the racks in that room right there. So the steel went from the rack to the saw to the build plate.
Okay.
Then off the build plates, the body plates were right next to them in the next room. So it went off that plate, measured, went to the body plate. They put the bodies on. Then from there, it went to the next room where the finish fab was. All the crush panels, windows, everything was built, fit, made, went on there. Then from that, went to the body shop, which was in the next room.
Now, these are the eras where they were bondoing the shit out of these bodies, right?
Yeah. Well, you tried not to put too much bondo. You tried to get the steel. Them guys there, Art Levance and Steve Marabelli and Mike even helped on some of them. They were good fabricators.
Yeah.
So we kept the steel, we kept the bondo to a minimum because we knew bondo was heavy.
Okay.
We wanted these cars as light as we can get them.
Okay.
So they were good. It didn't have a lot of bondo in them.
Oh, okay.
We built some cars where we just mudded the seams.
That was it?
That was it.
Okay.
And NASCAR got onto that too and said, no, we're going to put more mud than that in there. We don't want to see that. But we built them that way for a while. And then from the body shop, when they got done, they went right out into the big room, the main room, which is called the assembly room. They get assembled. And when they were done assembly, you let them down the ground, roll them right up to the setup plates.
Okay.
And then from the setup plates, they went down the main hall, out the back door, onto the chassis dyno, and then boom, right into the trailer.
Now, was this a pattern that had already been in place in other shops, or was this something that you had come up with at the time?
I'm sure other people had it.
Mm-hmm.
I never physically seen it other than in the Hendrick shop.
Mm-hmm.
I was in there a few times, and they kind of had it like that, but they had so many separate buildings, it was kind of different to watch the whole flow,
Mm-hmm.
where I could do it in one building.
Right.
But I'm sure there's a lot of shops that were set up that way because it only made sense.
Right.
The least you had to move things, the better off it worked,
Mm-hmm. And God, the guys built an empire in the Busch series. I mean,
Yeah, we were there for a good long time. We had good cars.
Now, you crew chiefed a lot of your career in the Busch series / Xfinity series. Were you ever a Cup crew chief?
A couple of times we did Cup races at Watkins Glen
Okay.
with Todd and Mike,
Okay.
and I crew chiefed them cars.
Okay.
We got a pole at Watkins Glen,
Cool.
and I think we finished mid-pack somewhere both races.
Okay.
But that was good for us because it was a one-shot deal,
Right.
and we built the car ourselves.
That's
Had a
cool.
Hutter motor in it, and we did pretty good.
And Ron recently passed too.
Yeah, my buddy Ron, poor Ron.
I know.
What a great guy. Another super person.
Decades of horsepower.
Yeah, met through racing, and just one of them kind of guys that just, you got to love him like like your dad, He was such a good guy.
That's cool. We are getting closer to the end of the show, but yesterday you were chatting with me about having a bunch of Bugsy Stevens stories. You gotta share a couple of Bugsy Stevens stories.
I got to tell you the best one. We were in Daytona. I think we must have been running. I don't know if we were in the road race or New Samaritan or something. But anyway, the reason we were coming back up was Ned Jarrett owned Metrolina Speedway in Charlotte here, which is right off the highway. So Ned had called a couple of us. He wanted to run a modified race, and he wanted some North cars to come. So he gave us like $400 each to come, So we didn't have a regular driver, so Billy, we called Bugsy. He said, Bugs, you want to drive this race for us? Sure, I'll drive it. He didn't care,
What year was this?
Oh, I wish I could remember. I say, I don't know dates. That's
Okay.
what kills me.
It's all good.
But you could look that up, too, when Ned Jarrett owned that track.
Like 60s or 70s we're talking though?
Oh, yeah, it was in the 70s, I'm
Okay.
sure. And Lenny, too, was part of the deal. Lenny brought his car with Freddie. And so we're up there, and we had to stay over because there was a 2-day show.
This is a modified race at Metrolina.
At Metrolina, yeah.
Okay. Against the Southern modified
South
guys.
cars and North cars.
Okay.
And Ned was trying to do it like a Martinsville deal.
Okay.
And I don't know how Ned how long he was going to own at least the track for, how many years he was going to try to do. He was trying to build something.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't continue it. He had only run 1 year, I think, and he got out. Because I think the guy was trying to get too much money from Ned to lease it, But we did run the one race. And so we had to stay over. We had a hotel on the side of 85 somewhere. And out in the back of the hotel was nothing. It was a field, And you know how the red clay is down here. So Bugsy and Carazzo always screw around with each other, comical, playing jokes on each other. So Billy got the best of Bugsy on the ride up from Florida. Something in a restaurant. I forget what he did to him anyway, but Bugsy owed him one. So Billy's gone somewhere, and me and Bugsy are in the room, and Bugs gets into Billy's clothes. They're in the drawer, He finds the underwear drawer. And, of course, back then, Billy, whitey-tighty underwear, Stole white, brand-new stuff, had a drawer full of them.
Fruit of the Loom.
Fruit of the Loom. Bugsy pulls all the underwear out of the drawer, puts them in a bag, goes out in back of the hotel, gets the red clay. Takes every pair, opens them up, and puts this red streak of mud in every pair of these underwear.
Like a shit stain.
Yeah, shit stain. Big, though. Big, huge stain. Folds all the underwear back up, goes back in the motel, puts them in the drawer, looks at me and says, shh. We're on the bed watching TV. Bugsy's in the chair. Billy comes in, takes a shower, goes to get dressed. You son of a bitch is all we hear. He had opened the drawer, and all the underwear was spread out because he was trying to find a pair that he didn't do, and he did them all. Bugsy got every one of them. And that's all you could hear was him yelling that.
Oh, my God.
Bugsy, you son of a bitch.
That's great.
Laughed my ass off.
He was a prankster, huh?
Oh my God.
Was he really?
Bugsy was a funny guy.
You know, I got to see Bugsy race a little bit later in my career when he was driving the Mystic Missile. I didn't get to see him any of the years in the wood shop or anything like that. But what was he like as a
Character.
driver? Yeah.
To describe Bugsy any other way than a character.
Oh, I've chatted with him a few times at the track, and he was funny.
He was like that as a race driver, but serious race driver.
Right.
He could wheel a car.
Really?
He was the king of Stafford. You had to beat him.
You know, I was talking with Jack Arute one time, and he said to me, Bugsy was Richie Evans before there was Richie Evans.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He was the guy you had to beat.
Yeah.
If you came to Stafford, that was your challenge. And very few beat him.
Okay.
Very few beat him.
He ran a lot at Seekonk too, right?
Yes, he did.
I've raced at Seekonk. I've announced at Seekonk. Fun track to drive, but man, when the car's not handling,
They wear you out up there.
Oh yeah,
The damn circle. And I'll tell you, the good ones, George Summers was one of the best there.
George Summers?
George and Ken Curley's cars.
Yeah.
Tough man to beat. And Ron Bouchard was tough there. And Bugsy.
Yeah.
Because we raced there a few times against them. Me and Eddie went up there we won a 100-lapper up there. We beat them guys one time in the 10 car.
Really?
10 car to 7. Might have been Steiger's 7 car. We won a 100-lapper there.
You know, it's so funny. Like all those guys, all those tracks in that area had those studs at them. You know, I mean, like Seekonk, you had George Summers, George Savory, you had D. Castell. In Stafford, you had, you know, you had Bugsy,
Freddie.
Rocco's, Freddie. You know, you go to Riverside Park and you had Bobby Stefanik to deal with, and
Reggie,
yeah, just so many of those guys that didn't get a chance. You know, like look at all those guys that could have raced at NASCAR's top level. You know, that just didn't.
Some of them weren't interested in it.
Why is that?
They'd rather be the big fish in the small pond than be the small fish in the big pond, I think.
Right.
They didn't want to deal with that.
I got you.
Know?
Yeah, I'm glad you had a chance. I'm glad you came in today and had a chance to talk with us, because I always enjoyed chatting with you at the track. I mean, my first introduction to you was in the K&M Pro Series when you were at Rev Racing.
Yep.
You know, I remember chatting in the pits, and you know, you were a modified guy. I was a modified guy, so we always had that little bond over that. And the cool part is that I always appreciated you, because being the pit reporter, I'm trying to find stuff out. So the drivers don't always want to talk to you all the time.
Understood.
Right. So like, I would remember asking you questions, and you'd give me, you know, some information that was really, really cool to go by and all that. And your name had come up in so many stories from other people on this show, you know, from Brett Bodine, Todd Bodine, God, who else had mentioned you to? Reggie. And I said, we got to get Clyde on.
I'm glad you did. I enjoyed this. You know, your last name, I knew of your dad. I knew of the midgets, the Long Island stories.
Oh, really? You know,
because Eddie and I, we used to go out there and race. You know, I would go with him.
Oh, no kidding.
He drove for Junior Ambrose sometimes.
Okay.
He drove for Frank Vigarola sometimes. We knew the Andersons really well, Wayne and Axel.
Yeah.
Baldwin's.
Okay.
Richie ran iSlip all the time, you know.
No kidding.
So I knew the name, and I knew your dad raced the midget.
Okay.
You know, owned a midget, raced it.
You want to laugh? This past weekend was his 80th birthday.
Okay.
So for his birthday, my nephew wanted to do like a guy's day, you know, for all the boys to go and hang out and do something. So he's a kid, so he brings up go-kart racing. Let's go to the local go-kart track, he says. You know, okay, fine. My father says, yeah, sure, let's go. 80 years old, okay?
He went go-kart racing?
He went go-kart racing. Not only that, okay, I shit you not. In the last race of the day, he wrecked me, my brother, and my nephew.
Good for him, by the way.
Clyde stuffed me in the fence so friggin' hard, the left front got jammed under the guardrail. I had to slide my leg back so I wouldn't break my ankle.
Good for him. I'm glad he enjoyed himself.
The funniest part of it is my brother and I were talking, because he wrecked my brother too. And then we're both giggling over it. And my nephew walks over it as he's pulling his helmet off. His eyes are as big as saucers. And he goes, Grandpa wrecked me.
Mess with the bull, you get the horn.
I'm telling you, 80 years old. God bless him, right?
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
I bet you that was fun.
It was great. Well, there's so many stories, God, that we didn't get to on here. We got to have you back for another.
We'll do it again sometime. Maybe we could bring Mike and I on together or something.
You know,
could go over the stories.
Mike McLaughlin. Yeah? I would love to have Mike McLaughlin on the show.
Now that Max got a ride, maybe Mike will have some time.
Yeah, I know, right? Because he's been working. He works on the cars.
His ass off on that modified.
Right.
Now Max is going to drive that late model car.
I know. I started. You want to hear fun? Here's another funny story about Max McLaughlin. I ran midgets for years on pavement, and back in 2012, I just discovered Millbridge, and a friend of mine had an outlaw cart. He'd been letting me run his outlaw cart, and they started me off in the 125cc division. I'm racing in the same division with Max McLaughlin as a little kid, and Carson Elledge, Dale Earnhardt's granddaughter.
That was his little girlfriend.
Yeah. So Max is running the Crazy 8 outlaw cart, and I'm racing with kids, you know. I mean, here I am in my 30s, and they are, 11 or 12 or whatever they were. And the third night of racing, Max comes up to me, a little kid. He goes, "Hey, man, for only your third time on dirt, you're doing a great job." Shakes I was like, "You little shit."
Max is funny.
I know, he is. I know. Because I had like 20-something years behind the wheel of a midget, and he walks over like, "Hey, you're doing a great job." Like I'm a rookie. Just
the first couple
great
times,
kid, though.
The first
Incredible
couple
driver.
times he raced there, Mike, working his ass off, and Max, the chain fell off or something. And Max says to Mike, "Dad, you cost me to win right here tonight." He said that to him. I never laughed so hard in my life. He says, "Mike, you cost him to win tonight. You better pay attention to what you're doing."
Oh, my God. Yes, we got to get Mike on. Is he living down here still? Is he up in New York?
No, he said he's going to be here this off season. So
is he?
He should be at his shop. Yeah.
We definitely got to give him. I got to get your number from him. We got to give him a call.
Yeah, I'll give you his number. We'll see if we can get a hold.
We'll have both of you guys in because
that'll be great.
We can have multiple guests, and because Mike McLaughlin. Oh my God, that'd be a great one to have.
And he's got some real non-racing stories that'll bust your gut.
Oh, I bet. So we'll definitely want to have him in. Reggie's another one that we get requests all the time to have Reggie back. Yeah. So if you see Reggie at
I see him every day.
Well, if you see him at Stewart Haas, next week, tell him, "Hey, I went and did Pernesiglio Show."
I will tell him.
He wants you to come back.
I'll see him Monday. I'll tell him.
Clyde, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Derek.
We're going to stay in touch. I definitely want to have you back. Want to have Mike McLaughlin back, and probably have you come back with Reggie too.
I'd like to come back with Brett or Todd, either one.
Absolutely.
I'd like to do one with Brett, really.
We could do the bar. We could do the bar set next door with all three.
That would be really cool.
You want to do that?
We'll
get
fun.
Brett and Todd and Mike, and we'll all sit around on the bar set, and
that's what we should do.
I'll talk to my producer because that's his other show. But
that would be a trip
to talk racing around a bar over a couple of beers.
That works, man. We should do that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Very cool. Clyde McLeod joins us for this episode of the Derek Pernesiglio Show. What a lot of fun Clyde was. Just amazing stories. But we want you to keep up with us on the Derek Pernesiglio Show. Follow us on YouTube. Hit that like and subscribe button down below. Also follow us on our social media channels, the Derek Pernesiglio Show on Facebook, and then also on Twitter, which is now called X, and on Instagram at RealDP Show. So for Clyde McLeod, I'm Derek Pernesiglio saying we'll see you the next time. Bye.